Hello and welcome to the Dream Architect Life with Brian Sweet and Brittany Anderson from Sweet Financial Partners. How are you guys?
So good, Eric.
Doing fantastic today. I'm so excited to be here. We've been getting all sorts of great comments from clients and people listening to the podcast. So this is really fun for us.
Yeah, this has been so enjoyable. What are we talking about today?
What aren't we talking about today? I think is the better question.
Let's not talk about the weather, please. It's just
Okay,
yeah.
fine. Okay, fine. We are going to talk about who you are surrounding yourself with. So,
Okay.
we've touched on this a little bit in past episodes, kind of sprinkled it in along the way. But because it is such an important component to creating the life that you can't wait to wake up to, creating the retirement you can't wait to wake up to, we decided to dedicate a couple episodes to this topic in particular.
All right. So we like you said, we've touched on it before, right? We've touched on it. I remember we were speaking about even people with good intentions can speak into our lives and not maybe the most positive way. So when you're talking about surrounding yourself with people, are you talking about getting rid of people as well? Or are we just really trying to just kind of bolster the positivity around us?
That is a great question, actually. There's a big theme that we want to point out before we get into the nitty gritty of this.
Okay.
Just because somebody is maybe on the negative side, they tend to have that negative mindset. They tend to maybe bring you down or drain your energy. It does not mean that they are a bad human being. Okay. So I want to just lay the foundation here. It just means that they're probably somebody that you shouldn't spend a ton of time with. So when we talk about getting rid of people or eliminating maybe your time with them, I just want to be careful to point out that we don't want people to feel guilt over this. It is all about self-preservation. It's about creating a life that you are excited about, that does not drain you, or at least minimizes the draining. That gets you eager to get out of bed, that gets you energized and excited and pursuing your goals and your dreams and the things that are good for your future. So, Brian, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, but I think that's a big thing that we want to point out ahead of time.
No, I think that's a really great way of opening this up in that, as we'll go into in more detail, there are just some people that really aren't probably good for your mental health and physical health and things like that. And it's just being aware of it and being conscious of it, and then consequently controlling the amount of time you spend with them.
Yeah. Yeah. The reason I asked that question specifically was I had the pleasure of speaking to a young man who is actually being drafted to the NFL. He actually is playing for the Cowboys currently. And one of the things he spoke about was that he had to realize at some point, he didn't want to leave his friends behind, but a lot of his quote unquote friends almost guilted him the way how well he was doing and how much time he was putting into his sport and how much time he was putting in at the gym and at college. And there was almost this, well, you'll spend that time with us, and who do you think you are kind of thing. It was like, well, he thinks he's an NFL player, which he absolutely is. And that's what his goal was. And he realized that the people that were encouraging him and positive around him, he wanted to be around them more. And I asked him specifically, how did you break off those relationships? He goes, well, I didn't. I just don't hang out with them as much as I used to, and because he just knew that they were just going to continually feed him and try to take him down to their level instead of him being able to elevate himself to the level he wanted to be at.
That's such a great example. And, the thing I keep thinking about here is if you put in perspective for your own life, right? Not everybody can relate to pursuing like the NFL. However, I think that's such a perfect example because if you think about it, think about the people that you're spending time with, that you leave them and you're like, my gosh, I feel like I could dance on the moon right now. I am so excited and I'm energized and I feel good and I'm happy and I'm looking forward to the next time I get to be around them. And then you think about the flip side. And you think about the people in your life, like you just gave example to, Eric, the people that are giving you a hard time for pursuing your goals, that are, maybe stressing you out a little bit because they're so focused on maybe how things used to be versus the person that you were growing into. And, as you're listening to this, you might be thinking, okay, they're a wealth planning business. What does this have to do with any of that? And the thing that I want to drive home is that it has everything to do with it. Because what people don't realize is the soft side or the emotional side of retirement, and how it is so important to protect your peace of mind, to protect your mindset overall through any massive transition, through any major change. Bryan, I think about you and your pursuits in business, and the positive influences in your own life. And I'd love for you to jump in and talk a little bit about, maybe Uncle Roy, Aunt Jean, talking about how they were always so focused on the positive, on lifelong learning, on, serving clients and putting people around them that give energy. And I think that's such a contributor to, what you do and how you make decisions today.
Yeah. Thank you, Brittany. I think, positive people in general, and just being conscious of those people that you spend the most time with, really, there's three benefits of spending time with uplifting people. One, if you want to achieve something, you need to be around people that have either achieved what you want or are like cheerleaders for you to get there. Because one, things are difficult to get to the next level of success. And so you either need an encouragement from a mentor that's already been there, or it's just somebody that keeps telling you, yes, you can. And so I think that's one aspect. So hanging around the right people helps in your achievement level. The second thing is attitude and mindset. So when you have the right attitude and mindset, what happens? Well, you have like unlimited energy. And you can probably hear that from Brittany and I, but we love what we talk about here, but it's because we get to hang out with the right people. And not only were my aunt and uncle like that, very encouraging and taught me a lot, but a lot of the organizations that we belong to, like the Genius Network and Strategic Coach, are a group of people that are like-minded, like Brittany and I. And when you get together with them, it's amazing just the possibilities that happen and how you think. And all of a sudden the world becomes much smaller and what you're able to accomplish becomes much bigger because they all think that way. But if you spend time with people that have never accomplished that, or negative Nellies, if you will, that's going to also affect what you do and how you think and your ability to have, any positivity. And then the third one is just relationships in general. And if you want to have really fun, enjoyable relationships, I think it's a lot more fun to hang out with somebody that's got high energy, thinks positive, and got the right mindset than somebody that's kind of like the news, if you will, and has like all these negative things. That's all they talk about, like, oh, woe is me. And so, that would be my thoughts on that, Brittany. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
No, I just completely agree. I mean, think about the world that we're in today and how easy it is to be fixated on the news and how heart crushing some of the things that you see, they simply are. But again, it's just not a space that you want to spend a ton of time and energy, because it does not add value and it doesn't contribute to what you're trying to do for your future. So I will add that. I think that's what you said was just dead on.
All right, I got a question for you and I've got a small story, an example for you as well. I want to ask you the question, do you think positivity goes hand in hand with generosity? And the reason I say this, or I ask this question, is because when we were down in EWAS, we were at that convention just in January, Bryan, I was surprised, number one, by the amount of energy you had. I'll be honest, I was exhausted, but you were constantly smiling. You were constantly moving. And it was such a small thing, but when we were setting up our booth, you came over and handed us a couple ice cold bottles of water out of the blue. You had all these other things that you were doing, and yet you thought about that moment and you thought, look at that big guy sweat over there, putting this thing together. And you brought us water, and that was just the first day. And I saw throughout, you were so generous with your time. You were so generous with the people that were around you. And yet you were constantly positive. And I kind of see that reflected, but I want to ask you, do you see that in the people that you surround yourself with? Do you think that positive people are more generous?
Well, that's a great observation. And first of all, thank you for those kind comments. But
Thank you for the water.
I would say, the answer to that would be yes. I've never really thought of that question before, but I would say definitely yes, because it seems like when you're with the right people, one of the urges or one of the things that happens is you want to do things for them because they've been helpful to you, and you want to, reciprocate whatever it is that they brought into your life. And so those little things, as small as bringing you some water, just kind of happen. But I think it's because there's that feeling or that relationship that gets created where you've already delivered value to me. And what can I do to be helpful, even as small as, like you say, bringing water back to you? And so, yeah, interesting. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Brittany, but
Yeah.
good question.
Well, first of all, that doesn't surprise me about Mr. Sweet at all. Like, he is that person. He's being modest here, but he is that person that, he'll put little candy treats on our desk, or he'll make it a point to come out and just say something silly or whatever. So that generosity absolutely doesn't surprise me. But there's a saying. It actually came from Joe Polish, the founder of Genius Network, that we've referenced multiple times. But he has this saying that goes, "The people who say that money can't buy happiness have not given enough away." So I think it's absolutely aligned. And that's a huge deal. I think about people who have, what would be, by many definitions, the most successful retirements, the happiest, the most fulfilled. They have something that they're contributing to. So they've got something, maybe it's a charitable endeavor, maybe it's some sort of massive legacy plan. I mean, those are the things that fill people's cups. The buy on the really cool car or the fun trip or, whatever material thing, it definitely creates fulfillment. And those are things that if you've got the funds, you should do it. Like, that's great. If that's what is in line with what you want for your future. But the things that really add value and put the meat in somebody's life, it's absolutely the things that are focused on generosity. So I think your question is a great question, and it's dead on, and it's true. And Bryan lives by example with that as well.
Well, you made me think of another quote. I think this is also Joe Polish, by the way, but he's got a saying that goes, life gives to the giver and takes from the taker. And, if you really think about that, that really is true. And if you do little extra things for people, it's amazing. The rewards you get back, 5-10 fold easily.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know that the next podcast you're going to be talking about kind of how to strengthen and build those relationships, correct?
We are. We're gonna talk about some tactical things that you can do. Today in this episode, we wanted to just paint the picture and draw it down to earth as to how important this is, and really how you can start being mindful of the people that give you energy. So we'll share in the next episode some things that you can do, that you can implement into your life to help you maybe make decisions around what supports your network, what supports the environment around you. And by environment, I mean the people, the interactions. So we will definitely be diving into that further.
All right. Well, before we wrap up do either one of you have closing thoughts for today's podcast?
Clothing thoughts. I like that. We could talk fashion. We need to incorporate
okay?
something.
Should have a tie on.
Well, I'll have to back out of that one apparently, but anyway, for another time.
I think just a closing thought in general is, you really need, and it goes back to what we've talked about in the last few episodes, but really define what success means to you. Define your own values and align the people in your life around those. If you've got people who are naysaying what you want for your future, or holding you back in some capacity, making you feel like your dreams are silly or they're not enough, or, whatever the case is, we want you to pursue what sets your soul on fire. We want you to do the things that you want to be doing that contribute to your own happiness. So I think it's just bringing mindfulness, and it's bringing attention to the topic. Ryan, I don't know if you want to add anything else there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably add one little point, and that's made me think of it from an earlier conversation before we kicked off the podcast. But, being around the right or the wrong people has a compounding effect. So the positive and or the negative effects may not show that day. But if you think about it, I'll just kind of give you the negative aspect. So let's just say one of the people that you like to hang around with likes to eat junk food and goes out for pizza every night and has a couple extra beers and at the time that's a lot of fun. And first night you do it, no big deal. And you keep doing that for 30, 60, 90 days. And then what happens? Well, maybe you're a little sluggish. Gee, my genes don't fit quite as good as they used to. And my energy level went down a little bit. And it's just the compound effect of, the results that happen by following and listening to those people. Consequently, if you hang around somebody that's more exercise oriented or, concerned about health, and there's probably some in between here, but, I'm just trying to state the point of, you need to look at those decisions that you make, not for the one day, but the compounding effect that will have over a long period of time, because that's where the major effect is and where it'll have either an extreme positive result or results that you would rather not have.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate those words mainly because you brought it right back to a clothing thought. The tight jeans really saved me in my misspeech. So you did have the clothing thought in there, Bryan.
Full circle.
It's all full circle. All right, you two, I'm so glad to be back recording with you. Thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for the content in this podcast. And of course, our last thank you goes to you, the listening audience. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the Dream Architect Life podcast with Bryan Sweet and Brittany Anderson. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. That way, when they come out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it really easy to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at Sweet Financial Partners, this is Eric Johnson reminding you that possibility comes to those who create it. And we'll see you next time.